everyone, and welcome to the Roundup. Heading into week 11 already, we are going to go through the biggest pieces of news and the best fantasy notes from fantasylife.com to help you, as always, dominate those fantasy football leagues. We've got a lot of injury reports. We got some key players coming back, so let's get into it in the Roundup. We had a couple backfields that gave us some answers to some pretty pressing questions in week 10. So let's go through the utilization report and see who we are upgrading and downgrading. Let's talk about this Detroit Lions backfield to start. We got David Montgomery back in action after he missed a few games with that rib injury, but a lot of fantasy managers wondered what his presence was going to do to Jahmyr Gibbs because of that breakout game that we saw before. Well, we were probably pleasantly surprised all around. David Montgomery finished with 17.6 fantasy points and Jahmyr Gibbs 26.2. But let's look at the utilization here on the Board Pro 75. As we can see from week 10 with Jahmyr Gibbs, he had 58% of the snaps, 45% of the rushing attempts, and then 64% route participation. And we can compare that to David Montgomery down here, who had 38% of the snaps, 39% of the rushing attempts, and then 30% route participation. So we can see that they did go back and forth every other series, but Jahmyr Gibbs did take some of that goal line work, which helped him see 2 touchdowns in week 10. Now, let's take a minute to talk about that this is a small sample size that we just discussed from week 10 because this was David Montgomery's first game back. But we can look and see that this work might be more evenly distributed going forward. Think of it as a 1A, 1B kind of situation, which I think is what the Lions wanted all along. That was the plan when they got David Montgomery and then they drafted Jahmyr Gibbs. So we can look at this and say, okay, moving forward, more evenly distributed workload for both of these guys. The one thing to watch out for with Jahmyr Gibbs is that if he does hold on to more of that passing down role, then David Montgomery does become more of a touchdown and game script dependent running back. So for right now, Jahmyr Gibbs, he upgrades to a low end RB1, and then David Montgomery does get downgraded to a high end RB2. The next backfield I want to talk about is Jonathan Taylor and Zack Moss for the Indianapolis Colts. Over the last 2 games, Jonathan Taylor has 47 combined attempts and targets compared to Zack Moss's 8. Now, we understand that the flip has happened, and we saw it in week 10 where Jonathan Taylor took 89% of the snaps. So there's no question there. But something we do need to keep an eye on is the inefficiency for Jonathan Taylor. He had 3 yards per carry on 23 attempts in week 10, and thankfully fantasy managers were all happy when he found the end zone to kind of save that week. But for right now, he does upgrade to a low end RB1, and if he can fix all that efficiency issues, then he will upgrade again depending on what he does this week to more of a high end RB1. We've got a week 11 mismatch, so let's talk about the San Francisco 49ers going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It feels like a really long time ago when we were worrying a little bit just about this San Francisco 49ers team. They dropped 3 in a row, then they went on their bye week, and then they came back and absolutely dominated the Jacksonville Jaguars. So with a fully healthy 49ers team, just how good can they be? We have a stat for you. No team has been able to hold the 49ers under 30 points in a game where 3 of their big 4 non-quarterback players are healthy. So yeah, we can look at this team and say, if everything is going right, they're also going to get right. So let's look at the mismatch that they have in week 11 from Ian Hartitz. He wrote this on fantasylife.com. They are going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So when you look at all these stats right here, it is not fantastic. And I'm sorry, Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans, but you probably didn't need us to tell you this. And this is before losing Carlton Davis. So as you can see, 26th in EPA allowed per pass play, 26 in yards per attempt allowed, 29th in explosive pass play rate allowed. You can keep going down the list, and it is not very good for them this weekend. So when you talk about a mismatch, you probably didn't need us to tell you you should be starting all of these San Francisco 49ers on offense and in your fantasy teams because they have an implied team total of 26.25 points. So we love all the points. We know that going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is probably going to be something that we definitely want to target this weekend. And here's hoping that anything that we thought about the San Francisco 49ers just not too long ago is a thing of the past, and we get this fully healthy team that does continue to dominate and help our fantasy leagues. We got the unfortunate news on Friday afternoon that Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow would be out for the remainder of the season after he suffered a torn ligament in his wrist on Thursday Night Football. And this is such a blow to this Bengals team because Joe Burrow already had the calf injury to start the year. So now he ends the 2023 season with 2,309 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Now, it is still unknown if the Cincinnati Bengals are going to continue going on with Jake Browning, who also played on Thursday Night Football once Joe Burrow left the game. But right now they sit at 5-5 and they are last in the AFC North. So who's to say if they are going to be able to make it through this season and make the playoffs? But here's hoping for a quick and good recovery for Joe Burrow. There is a fantasy wide receiver that you definitely need to be trading for, and I guarantee you do not have this guy on your radar. Dwayne McFarland is going to tell us who it is and why you need to go get him.
Hopkins has been earning targets at a high rate all season. He's a top 12 target earner even at the age of 31 from a target share perspective. But another thing that's happened with Will Levis, the Titans are running more plays per game. Their low over the last 3 with him under center is 59. They got to that number only twice before Levis became the starter. So that's another positive. But the biggest thing here for DeAndre Hopkins, it's the air yards. We've seen his average depth of target explode with Levis chunking the ball down the field. We've got 120, 156, and 188. For an average of 155 air yards per game. That's going to come down some, but there's plenty of cushion. 41% of the team's air yards have gone through Hopkins. And then lastly, we can take a look at the targets in the end zone. And while the raw numbers are really good, when we take a look at the percentages, it's over 50%. Over 50%. So we don't have a young ascending rookie wide receiver. With Adam Thielen either. We're looking at 2 old vets, but what do we have? 2 young quarterbacks. And these teams want to give their young quarterbacks the best chance to continue to grow over the rest of the season. That's why I'm also high on these 2 vets, because as long as they don't get hurt, they're going to stay in their role. There's no one to challenge them, and these teams want these quarterbacks to have a good experience over the second half of the year, and you need a quality target earner to do that.
Now it's time to go through our Underdog Pick'em plays heading into Week 11. And remember, make sure you use the promo code LIFE to get your first deposit matched up to $100 at UnderdogFantasy.com. So let's go through some of our favorite plays for Week 11. Now that we're all logged in at UnderdogFantasy.com, let's go through some of our favorite plays for Week 11. And let's start over here with Jerome Ford. I like his higher than 12.5 receiving yards. And now I know this game is not amazing at all. It has such a low total, but let's make it watchable together. When you're looking at the Steelers, they have allowed a running back to have 12 plus receiving yards in every single game this season. And I know that they're going to have Dorian Thompson-Robinson. It's a downgrade from Deshaun Watson. But the last time that Jerome Ford played with DTR, he caught 5 passes for 19 yards. And we have him projected at Fantasy Life for 15.5 receiving yards. So I really like the higher on that one. And then we're going to go to a very fun game, total opposite of the last game that we just talked about. We're going to go Houston Texans, Arizona Cardinals. I like Nico Collins higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. He should be back in the lineup, which is absolutely amazing. And we have Noah Brown that is officially out. So I think that they get back to the way things were. I think his connection with CJ Stroud is going to come alive. This is going to be a fun game. So I like his higher than 0.5 rushing and receiving touchdowns. So make sure you go UnderdogFantasy.com. Use that promo code LIFE. They will match your first deposit of up to $100. We've got a great streak going. We're going to keep it alive in Week 11. Good luck. All right, that was the roundup for Week 11. Thank you so much for joining me as always. And make sure you go to fantasylife.com. Go check out our rankings, our utilization report. Everything over there is 100% free. And while you're there, make sure you go and subscribe to that newsletter in your inbox 7 days a week. Good luck in Week 11 with all the injuries. We've got key guys coming back. It should be a great week of football.